yourself. Hope everybody's having a nice week and safe week. That's important depending upon where you are in this world, because sometimes there's not some nice things happening over different places. But thanks for tuning in and taking the time to do that. I'm Rob Starr along with Ms. Tara Malali and Ms. Chris Austin from Maven's Notebook. And so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, most wild ladies. How you doing?
We're doing pretty good. Yeah, hanging in there.
That's what I like to hear. Hey, I had asked Tara a question. So I was watching an old TV show that was on before you were born. It was called Highway Patrol with Broderick Crawford. You probably don't know who he is either. And I used to listen.
I don't know who today actors are either. So, in all fairness, so
they had a gentleman. I forget the first name, but the last name was Malali.
Oh.
Did you have a relative that worked in the TV business?
I did not, because my maiden name's Bravo. So it used to be Tara Bravo, which would have been a really cool name with your Rob Starr. But sadly, I got married, and so I'm saddled with this, Malali name.
You mean you don't have a stage name?
No, I don't have a stage name, because I think my name's just good enough.
Years ago, I found a birth announcement card that my parents had done when I was born. It says Another Star Production.
Oh, I love it.
So it was kind of interesting. Anyway, lots of things are going on in California about water, and you had a busy time this week.
Every week is busy. This never lets up now, does it? Although it was a little dull over the weekend, but everything just keeps picking up.
Well, I was reading about the Scott Cameron, who's the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Department of Interior, and Dan Denham from the GM from San Diego Water, talking about desal plants.
Yeah, didn't we talk about this last week? Now they're saying, lots of desal plants on the coast, 6, even a dozen, they say, and which is very interesting. I would have to, I still maintain my pessimism. And what's interesting is that they don't talk about the other main issue, which is the infrastructure to deliver that water to people, living on the Los Angeles plain. As I explained last week, the water comes in large part from the north and from the east, and the pipes are very big in northern LA County and in eastern Southern California. And as the water gets delivered and goes along the way, the pipes get smaller and smaller and smaller, and they're pretty damn small down by the coast. Now, I did do some research online, and Google tells me that desalinated water from a desalination plant can be directly consumed. It does not need to go through a drinking water plant. But so you wouldn't have to put it through a drinking water plant, but you still have to deliver it, and you still have to deal with the fact that all the infrastructure is completely backwards for this kind of an operation. And getting that fixed is going to be very expensive and involve a lot of tunneling through earthquake country to make that happen. So, I do remain a bit pessimistic on it, but we'll see what happens.
I know we had on a couple months ago this other company that's doing some stuff in Orange County and Los Angeles County, where they have the pods that they send down to the bottom of the ocean and uses it to pump up. And because one of the biggest issues, or some of the biggest issues, is that the power to power it.
The power and the brine.
Right.
But that seems to be a fairly benign system on those counts. And how far they can scale it up, we'll see. Desalination for the coastal communities is certainly a doable thing. But I think if you're going to think about desalination for, Riverside and San Bernardino, I think you're going to have a hard time figuring out how to get that water all the way up there in some kind of cost-effective way.
Yeah, you're absolutely true. And, the other thing that you read, Tara, if you have the question, pop on in. Sorry, but one of the things that interested me also is the fact that the solar with the California aqueduct.
Oh, yeah, that is expensive. that is what I thought. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. The story being that they brought on a new solar plant to offset the electrical usage of the state water project, because the state water project does produce hydropower, but only about 45% of the power it consumes, most of that to get that water over the Tehachapi Mountains and into Southern California. They have some of the largest water pumps there in the world, and when they start up that plant, the lights dim in Bakersfield, or they used to. They have to start it up in a very constrained manner now to make that not happen, but it's huge. And so they're trying to offset that power usage by solar energy. It's part of the government, the state government's work to, bring down greenhouse gas emissions. So it's 1% to 3% for this one plant, I guess, but they're saying down the line it could be 10 to 20% more for the cost, of the solar projects. Although I wonder if that analysis would account for any rising electrical prices, because electricity is also going up. And boy, natural gas, it was expensive this winter. So, I don't know if that analysis includes comparison to other power sources.
No. Well, everything's going up. You also did an article talking about, besides the solar panel, about water and how the cost of that is rising, and what people are doing to look for reusing water. That's good. They're starting a big push again for reuse of water.
Another expensive
either.
Yeah, another expensive, another expensive option. But I think that's kind of where we're at. I mean, we're not necessarily out of water. We're just out of cheap water.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, well, I think it's Dr. Jay Lunn at UC Davis. It's like, to say that we're short of water is to say that I'm short of a Corvette because there's not one sitting in my driveway. It's like
there's plenty of Corvettes in the world.
Yeah, I'm short on sports cars, but yeah,
me too.
But we're kind of out of the cheap options. The cheap options are taking it from the rivers and streams, but we have taken so much water from our environment here in California. In some places, like the Merced River, dried up for 4 months in 2022, and nobody noticed. The gauges went dry, but and they did an analysis. The state water board did an analysis, said that nobody violated their water rights. Just everyone pumping their groundwater and taking their water diversions dried up the river completely, and that's really bad for the environment. And I think we can all agree we do want to have water in our rivers. So, we have to really take a look at these things. And it's not just, while there are lots of situations where one might say, the environmentalists are a little over the top, I think it is, though, sadly true that in some areas, in some rivers, we take more water than we really should, to the detriment of the environment.
Well, and that's why I feel like if we could focus the efforts on places that it really needs it, instead of places that just whatever, like, it would make so much more sense, and we'd be able to have a bigger impact. But instead, we just kind of do these broad brush solutions that don't make sense for every single location. And I wish that somebody would just go, okay, I'm going to stop with the broad brush solution, because not all of California is the same, and I'm going to figure out what's going to work here and what's going to work there. And I know that the California Water Plan, I've seen a little bit of that and they're starting to do watershed by watershed analysis, but unless there's a funding plan that goes with it, it still doesn't matter.
Well, then, the other thing that's going on that's not really well publicized is the State Water Board is doing such an analysis, such a supply and demand analysis for watersheds, and they're rolling it out. I think they have 8 or 15, they might be up to 15. We're just talking, simple watershed, not large, but, and they're working these models, developing these models. It's part of, getting better at being able to declare curtailments, and because we have such an issue with, different types of water rights overlapping and conflicting, and certainly appropriative water rights versus riparian rights versus pre-1914 rights. You have,
don't you touch those pre-1914 rights. People be coming for you.
No, you can't. And, if you're riparian, then if there's a shortage, you're supposed to share it together with everyone else who's riparian. And if you're appropriative, then you're cut off senior to junior. But how does appropriative rights mesh with riparian rights in a drought? It's a real problem, and we've never worked that out.
One of the biggest lawyers win.
But I was doing a report summary, working on a report summary that at UC California University had produced. I'm not going to get any more specific than that, on how they thought that the State Water Board could improve their curtailment process. And their suggestion is that every single watershed in the entire state must be, worked out, adjudicated essentially, and who has rights, and how rights and to how much and to all that stuff. There are, 1,200, 1,500 rivers in the state. I mean, it's quite an extensive amount of water courses that we have. And I look at that and I say, well, yeah, sure, in a perfect world, we would go and adjudicate every river system in the state. But that is tremendously expensive and would take a very, very long time because everyone's going to haggle and hassle over it. I don't know. Yes, that would solve the problem, but are we really going to be able to fund that and stomach going through all those? I mean, to me, it's almost an impossible task.
Well, look at the tribes. I mean, they're still going after everybody, for their shares of the water. And that's going to be a growing thing. I mean, everybody is fighting for the same thing, but nobody wants to. Well, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say this. They've got to find a way to solve the issue, as Tara and you say all the time. But everything somebody brings up, like whether it's the aqueduct or any of the things that we just talked about, with water, I don't think there's enough attention given to partnerships to be made to help solve some of these problems. Just like I mentioned before, that other desal company that came up with some new technology and having these pods down at the bottom of the ocean help pumping up and saving electric and all those other things. And just like the brine, what do you do with the brine? And there's companies and people that come on and they mine the brine and make omega-3 vitamins and makeup and all kinds of stuff. I don't see a lot of push in that area. To me, it's the small little unknown companies behind the scenes that are working on this and trying to get the bigger water agencies involved or somebody to partner with them because they don't have tons of money, these startups. But there's so much technology that I believe is out there that we're not coming close to using it.
Well, I think part of the problem is that a lot of these things, these technologies are great, but can they scale up? That's the problem. I mean, ocean pods on the bottom of the ocean floor, I don't know if you could scale that up to satisfy, a large amount of Southern California. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. That, remains to be seen. The other thing that, and I'm sure Tara will speak to this in a minute, but it is very hard for water agencies to take risks, to put up public money on something that could be risky, because ratepayers do not like that. And it really makes it very, very hard if you're innovative, like me. My website, very innovative. That doesn't mean that all the water agencies can just give me money. I mean, they can now because I'm a nonprofit, but it's hard to get them to invest in something that's risky or, I don't know. Tara, you speak, because, you're spending the public's money,
So, really, and you do have some bold board members, which may be able to sort of overcome the risk averseness of government, but truly, and I've actually been on the side of the salespeople as well, trying to sort of get a new technology out there. In fact, it's the whole bioreactor, which by MIH, which stands for Make It Happen, and it was about bugs eating all the nitrogens out of the water, which was a biological reaction versus a chemical reaction to sort of treat water for nitrogen, which has been a big issue across the United States. And to even have a pilot project, you had to have so much proof of concept before an agency would even engage in a pilot project. And then even if it started a pilot project, that's like 3 years of pilot project to prove its efficacy, far beyond anything that you would normally see in a technological world, which means this startup has to have funding for basically a decade before it can even reap a tiny bit of profit, which then, if we're talking about, again, a capitalist society, which we live in, it doesn't make any sense to continue to do that. So then people give up, which means the technology dies, and we're back to we don't have any innovative technology because it takes so long to bring things to fruition in our industry just because it is public money. And we don't want to be willy-nilly with public funds. We don't want to be just spending and going like, we know it sounds maybe crazy, but if it could work, yay! So it just doesn't make sense.
I agree. I told a story that happened 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. The Department of, and I won't mention the people's names, but they worked for the Department of Water and Power in L.A. And they were looking for what they called an ombudsman. And they wanted him to be in charge of customers and going out and making sure that they're taking care of that. They listen carefully to what their customers want, and they worry about how much it's going to cost for water and the rates and everything else. So the job started at $275,000 a year, plus expenses in a car and everything else. And for the whole tenure that this person that they hired was supposed to go to all these meetings and did. He went and listened to everything else. But every time it went in front of the board for a vote to increase money, guess what happened? It raised it up.
Yeah.
Never stood over. So there's a lot of money, to me, there's a lot of wasted in how that organization is run. Not necessarily, but I don't mean just LA Department of Water, but I mean any organization. There's fluff in a lot of stuff that nobody wants to go. They'd rather not go after that, but just put an image out there. We hired this guy, and he's gonna be sincere and be your ear to the board and do all this stuff. Then nothing happens, and they raise the rates.
Mm-hmm. I think there's just something weird, and there's just a whole weird relationship in Southern California and Los Angeles with the people, the residents that live there, and the LADWP. I think it's written in the rental agreements and the property deeds that if you live in LA, you must hate LADWP. Because people just get mad about it so much. And I lived in there, and I was like, well, yeah, it's a tower, yeah, it's a bill, but yeah.
They're just passionate.
Well, I also think LADWP is a very old utility. I mean, it's been around for 100 years, so plus, right? And so they have old equipment and kind of maintaining it and having to deal with some of these things. Like they had to cover all the reservoirs the EPA said all treated drinking water must be in covered reservoirs. Well, DWP has a very old system with these reservoirs all across the Southland or all across LA County that it took them quite a bit of time to make that happen. But in the meantime, they put the black balls in the reservoirs. And then they happened to do that during the drought. So then somehow the conservative commentators in D.C. got a hold of that as just the wackiest drought thing. I know, because my parents, who are Fox News addicts, were calling me up going, "Oh, they're putting balls in the reservoir for drought." And I was like, they've been doing that for years because they have to cover it. It has nothing to do with the drought. They have to cover the reservoirs. But I think they finally now got every reservoir either rebuilt or covered in a more permanent way. But it took them a long time because they have, I mean, it's an old system, you know, and all that area was developed, you know, so long ago. You know, they have a lot to deal with.
In so many cities, and just in general, or even special districts sometimes, but mostly I have to say it's like a lot of the people where the investment back into the system is not a primary concern, regardless of if it's a special district, a city, a private company. I mean, you have people who have 100-year-old pipes that haven't been replaced or even really maintained because no board member wanted to say yes, or no council member wanted to put the money back into the system. They wanted to put it into the general fund or whatever it is.
And I do think the city of Los Angeles is guilty of that for taking money from LADWP because it's a city agency. You know,
they lease the system.
What about, you know, as Tara says, what about the old systems that are in place? They leak. I've read a couple of reports over the years of how much water is leaking from broken pipes that hasn't been addressed. Now, they're not major breaks, but they're leaking water every second of the day. And they're 100-year-old pipes.
Because the water isn't expensive enough yet.
Yes.
But it will be.
Oh, it's coming.
Yeah, and tearing up streets to replace pipe is an expensive proposition that pisses off the people that have to live around it. So, you know,
well, there's a new technology. I'm not trying to promote my old company, Toro, but they have a division that goes out there, and they don't have to dig up the whole street for miles. They can put this called blue light, and they put this stuff inside these pipes, and it's cured with literally a blue light, and they don't have to dig up miles of piping to do that. But that's been known for a long time. But you know, I don't know what they're doing. I read a report a couple of weeks ago and showed, I can't remember the exact number. I put it away to save it for another day to read. But so much water is leaking per day of all the systems in California.
It's billions of gallons, for sure. I remember there was like some sort of infographic that I remember working on that was like billions of gallons. But one of the things that, even if it was blue light, right? So like, even if we use this particular technology, you would still have to completely drain the system. You still have to completely block off certain spaces so that way the water isn't flowing through it, right? So there's all of that. I was working on this project that was shutting down streets to replace pipes in a retirement community where everybody just had time. It was like we were so under a microscope because every single time you try to like turn off the water, replace the thing, that is when people get so upset. So even if they didn't have to tear up the street, which is even worse, they would still be upset with you for the cost of it because maybe the pipe's cheaper to just put in, and then you'd have to argue that the blue light would last longer and does it. And like, there's so many parts of the argument that you feel like you're going insane during the process. It's you go like, it's like, I don't know, 100 gallons a year for us. We don't care. Because if it's billions of gallons across the U.S., but only 100 gallons to you, you're not going to do anything. You're just not.
True. Very true. Anyway, but there's been a lot of issues this week. What else do you got?
Gosh, I don't know. I was looking at the time. Usually it's that time. Hey, you could own your own island in the Delta for just $39,000. If you take a look at this picture and tell me that's an actual island, I'm going to have to kind of debate you on that. But if you want a wedge of scrappy marsh in the middle of a channel in the Delta, it's yours for $39,000. I don't think you could build anything on it. I think you might be able to. Well, I don't know. It'd probably be hard to put a pier in there. It doesn't look like it has any actual land.
Well, the permit would take a long time for that.
Yeah. So I think you'd have to build on that in order to make it so that humans can live there or habitate or whatever. Would be the cost of that alone would just be crazy.
Yeah, I don't know what you'd want to do with that, but hey, $39,000.
Well, and somebody already made an offer, so somebody wanted it. I don't know who, but...
Well, it's time for our commercial break coming up here, but as I tell everybody every single week, please go to mavensnotebook.com. That's what Miss Ellen does here, and it's awesome. Miss Austin is an awesome writer, an awesome person. Well, I got a lot of awesome things to say about you, but I'll save it for another day. But all kidding aside, go to Maven's Notebook, get the daily information about what's happening in water in California. It's amazing how much she puts out every single week, and gets good backstories and things that people tell her about, or she just twists it out of them because they know she was coming after them, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I'm coming after you. That's my whole MO.
You can also be a sponsor by going to www.mavens.com. I suggest you all do that, and you get this information free every day, and it's awesome. So thanks a lot, Miss Austin. You have a great, wonderful week. I think it's a little not too hot out where you are this week.
It's pretty toasty. 95. Yeah.
It's 106 here, so getting a little warm. So, all right. And,
right, 72.
Yeah, but you're by the ocean. Come on.
Sorry.
Go away.
I'm just saying, I moved here for a reason.
I know. And you're a surf bunny. That's okay. We like that.
I'm all good.
You're right.
Hit some waves.
Yeah, hit the wave. All right, thanks, Chris, for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week. We'll take a little break and be back with our featured guests, so stick around for the second half. We appreciate it.
Southern California Radio, 1050 AM and 106.5 FM.
Water is one of the biggest expenses for communities, HOAs, universities, golf courses, and resorts. So keeping those costs under control, especially when rates are increasing while water supplies are being reduced, are often essential to a customer's survival. Managing water requires multiple skills, which is why it's been complicated and difficult until now. AquaTrack brings multiple skills and technologies together to help large system users conserve outdoor water and improve the health of their landscapes. AquaTrack's professionals are certified landscape water managers and certified landscape irrigation auditors. The company offers audit services, upgrade advice, technical expertise, and water use monitoring. We already manage irrigation water for the largest homeowner associations in Arizona, and we're prepared to bring our knowledge and experience to help others, including landscapers and designers. Give us a call and hear how AquaTrack saved one HOA some 430 million gallons of water and $200,000 in annual water expenses. AquaTrack is Arizona-based, and you can reach us at 623-594-8689. That's 623-594-8689.
Just finishing the morning grooming. Most dogs need a brush. This one, just a little weeding. If only your own lawn could be so easy to manage. Wait, it can be. Let me introduce to you the Pro Trade Pet Turf. This turf has a permeable backing, allowing rain, rinsing, or dog debris to just filter right through and not hang around. It's easy to maintain, easy to clean, and even easier to install. It's manufactured so that the color looks as good on day one as it does on day 1000. To order your ProTrade Pet Turf today, come into your local SiteOne store or check out siteone.com.
And awesome and wild woman. I always have to call you that now because everybody. And that's a woman of water. Just to clarify that, make sure everybody gets that straight so we don't get sued for something silly. Anyway, thanks for listening in. We have a featured guest who I'm excited to talk to, and I'm going to try to make sure I get his name correctly. He's Professor Elias Scudero. He is Associate Professor at UC Riverside, and he's also an agronomist. So we had a good conversation. We're going to talk about sensing, water sensing, so it's moisture sensing. It's a pretty interesting conversation what he's doing over at the university. So, Dr. Scudero, how are you today? Thanks for joining us.
Good. Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me. Great being here with you.
I know for our audience, you and I had a couple conversations a couple of weeks ago about stuff, and I was very impressed by what you were doing, and I thought this would be a great bit of information to give our listeners and people in the farming industry and so forth and so on. But before we take a deep dive into that, just for the people so everybody gets to know you a little better, what drew you to the industry that you're doing now, being a professor and working in agronomy and all that? What inspires you to go that direction?
Well, so the reason why you had a hard time getting my name right, and actually you did get it right, so kudos on that. It's because I'm originally from Italy. I grew up in a family farm in northeast Italy, and I always loved being out in the fields. So we have this river going through our farm, and my dad used to tell me, when I was a kid, I used to go and swim there, and I was like, you must be joking, right? Because when I grew up, the river was full of aquatic weeds. And as I grew more and more conscious of the reasons why that happened, it's because of a large scale farming that happened in the second half of last century. The area where I grew up is a very strong dairy farming area. We produce the grana padano that you find at Costco and other stores here in the States. So the heavy load of nitrogen that was used to produce all the corn up there pretty much trickled down the rivers, making water quality pretty much a nightmare and unusable for how my dad was using the river when he was just a kid. So with that in mind, I went through environmental sciences in Italy, and then I came as a visiting graduate student here to the University of California, Riverside, specifically at the U.S. Salinity Lab, which is a USDA Research Service national lab that Riverside is hosting on the campus. And it's world famous for agriculture and water scarce environment, irrigation management, and anything really soil and water related. So while I was here, I really loved the place, and they asked me to come back as a researcher after I finished my PhD. And then, I met my wife when I came back in 2012, 2014, and then I stayed and continued my research until I was appointed as a faculty member of the university here.
Wow, pretty exciting. So now you've been working on remote moisture sensing, and you have kind of give us the history about that and how that project started and where it is today.
So pretty much I've been studying what limits agriculture throughout my entire academic career, and where we can improve those resources when they are not used wisely. And of course, here in California, in the U.S. Southwest in general, water is the primary limiting factor. And tying back to the nitrogen and the fertilizer discussions from earlier, in most cases we are not managing water and fertilizers hand in hand. So understanding how we can improve the management of water in our irrigation can also help with improving our fertilizer management. But in practice, I was working and going out in the field, and I specialize in mapping spatial variability of soil so that you can, nowadays it's fairly common practice to divide your field in soil zones and apply fertilizer differently for the different zones. But as I drove, I did all this work across California and meeting growers, I noticed that there's a lot of fields that are very, very heterogeneous. And typically, the more tech-savvy growers would have these soil moisture sensors that are placed in their field to tell them when to irrigate or check if their soils are getting too dry or so. But the thing is, they typically have money perhaps to install one or two, and nowadays, the main model for this is that you have you get these sensors from servicing companies, and the companies themselves are coming in to install these sensors in your field for quite a price tag, right? So there's a big barrier here to be more wise on how we use water. First of all, we need to know how much water is in the soil, but to know how much water in the soil, we need to measure. But we cannot measure if we have only this one sensor for a field or for a production block. Because there's so much heterogeneity. If you put it in, let's say, in the middle of the field, you might capture a very wet soil, whereas in another end of the field you might have a dry end of the soil. So you might be overwatering half of your field, underwatering the other half of the field. So we have been studying ways of leveraging these sensors that the growers already have in the field, and using either satellite data from NASA or the European Space Agency to understand what the water levels are like to be in the remaining parts of the field, or even more recently with sensors that you can pretty much mount on a robot or some of the field vehicles that the farmers already have, and as they drive through the field, they can have a map of the water content in all the trees or the crops in general.
Tell me more about the robots. I'm so curious. I read the whole article about your robot-assisted soil conductivity measurements. So, that was really cool, and I'm super interested in, how you leverage the inexpensive, really making this accessible, but also robots, which I love robots. So, tell me more. Yeah.
Robots are cool. So shout out first of all with the folks in the robotics group here at UC Riverside. The lab of Konstantinos Karidis is a great partner in this research. I went to them and they came to me because I was out in the field getting hitting my head on all the branches of all these almond trees in the Central Valley, and I was like, we are applying water just close to the trees. All this, it's inaccessible for my, big tractors, and how we are taking out, sometimes the sensors by hand when we are trying to do some, developmental research. And I talked to this robotics guy. He said, yeah, sure, we can put a robot that just goes by itself in the field and goes under the canopies, and you can measure water content where it's applied. And I said, fantastic. So this idea came by when we sat down and talked to some of the growers. Specifically, this was with some almond growers. And they were like, we have vehicles in the field once a week, twice a week, just checking the lines that they are not being beaten out by coyotes or other thing that can happen with these micro irrigation systems. So if you have something that can check on those, but at the same time get us like a map of soil moisture, that would be fantastic. And that was, I think, 2019, 2020, right? So we say, yes, we can do this. And slowly but surely, we started seeing first, can we put a sensor that measures soils without getting all measurement fuzzied out because it's so close to our robot that is like a very, high electromagnetic equipment that is mounted on board. And so that we figured that out. And then finally we said in the past couple of years, okay, the growers have these sensors already in the field. These sensor that we can put on a robot really is not telling us like this is the exact water content in the soil. It's telling us this soil is dry, this soil is wet. So if we develop this data science model between the sensor that the growers already have and the sensor that we can put on the robot, then that's the bingo, right? Then we can have a measurement for water content for every single tree. And what we produce is kind of like one of like the first of its kind, I think, because if you think about your orchard from the top, think about being a bird flying over this orchard, you will see these trees that are on their own or on edge growths. But pretty much, we are able to give you an information about what the water is for each in the soil for every single tree. Which is kind of crazy because you can think about in the future you want to track the performance of your orchard on a 3x3 level for like from the time you plant it to the day you take it out, or you can manage irrigation for different zones, or you can manage irrigation even for the single tree if the hardware will catch up and be cost effective in the future. But really, what we show is that once you do this type of mapping, you have patterns that start emerging. You can see areas in the field that indeed are wetter and much wetter than some areas in another end of the field, depending on the soil spatial variability of a specific field. But also, there's a lot of variability from one tree to the next, which is something that it's kind of known, but like the amount that we show is kind of remarkable.
The sensors that I'm familiar with, they put them into the ground. Now, does your robot carry the sensor and then it goes down into the earth to measure it? Or because I know a lot of the moisture sensors that I've seen, they're more analog and you need to be hardwired out. Or I know there's some companies that make some that have RF capability, so it transmits the information to a receiver.
So no, our sensor is a non-contact sensor, the one that is on the robot, and it communicates. It talks to those sensors that are in the soil, like the ones that you described, right? So the growers might have those, and they might have their own data logger, or they might be able to communicate in real time via Bluetooth or other wireless protocols. And as the robot passes by, you pair the measurement from like that sensor, non-contact sensor that the robot has that is measuring the conductivity of the soil, to the sensor that the farmer already has in the field that is measuring the actual water content of the soil. So if you do this often enough across different fields and so on, you start building a model that can help you predict the water content from that electrical conductivity that the robot is measuring.
Wow. That's pretty interesting. I know it's probably a lot more economical doing it that way. I know there's other companies that have, what do you call these little planes that they fly over, and they fly over the fields and take measurements and things of that sort. But that's got to be expensive to fly drones all day long and hire these companies to come out and do that, where yours would go up and down the crop line, which makes it smarter and easier to deal with, and probably get much more accurate reading.
Yeah, and if you're like if you can't sleep at night, you can go and look at the recent literature in the field of agricultural engineering and precision agriculture, and you will see that there's a lot of research that is being developed using drones for water content mapping, but that's mostly on corn, soybean, and other herbaceous crops that don't have thick canopies like the specialty crops here in California, the tree crops here in California. So one of the challenges when using drones is that you have to go through that canopy to measure the soil under the tree. So we found out that this ground-based type of measurement kind of bypasses the problem entirely. And if you have vehicles already in the field, this is a no-brainer, really. So one version of this is already kind of like scaled up at the commercial scale with turf. There's this Swiss company that we work with that has developed this radiometer measuring the microwave emissions of the soil, and they put it on the back of the mower. So anytime you mow a field, pretty much you have a map of soil moisture. That's a little bit more straightforward, right? Because you can think of, okay, there's a mower, the sensor is on the mower, and so on. Whereas, like, going into a orchard with very big trees is a little bit more complex in terms of like the making everything works in terms of sensors and hardware and the GPSs, but we can get there anyways.
So with the robots, is it super complicated to like manage, or is it like a Roomba with a sensor on it? Like, how does that work? And because I'm sort of thinking, like, if I'm 15 and my dad's a farmer and I'm in the farming industry and I'm trying to get interested, I mean, driving around a robot would be really fun. But is it like that, or is it more automated?
Actually, so the robotics folks here at UCR have we published this research article that you read, but they have the twin article that shows how the robot can pretty much do this autonomously. So they are in the very early stages of that, but they made significant strides. Pretty much, we let the robot go by itself, and we visited every single tree in the orchard with a sensor, providing the map that we wanted to, and that was done all autonomously by the robot. But on the other hand, you can also do this with like a remote controller by planning the surveys, pretty much similarly to how the drone surveys are planned, where you plan it up beforehand and then you execute, and the drone will do it by itself.
Wow, that's pretty neat. I was excited when I read the article once. I told you it's amazing what people can come up with and do, and I think it's a smart way. Now, I know there's a lot of test fields out at UCR because they used to use our irrigation controllers out there and some of our micro irrigation products. But aside from doing it at UCR premise, do you have any other places that you try to test these out at? Any farm businesses or anything?
Well, so we've been contacted by a few growers that are interested in taking that the system to their field. So that's what our phase 2 is going to look like in the next in this summer and the next fall and the next year as well. But yeah, because I mean we're very lucky here at UCR. We have I believe the largest on-campus research farm of the entire UC. We have the super. Yeah, you guys should come visit. It's amazing. We have
to come visit. You just have to invite me.
Yeah.
I was going to say.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No. Do you happen to know a gentleman named Dave Fugino?
No, not personally. No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I used to do a lot of stuff with him at UC Davis, and then I forget the gentleman that I worked with over at UCR on the micro irrigation side. But no, you guys are amazing what you do. And like I said, I was surprised to read the article, but I wasn't surprised that it came from you guys because you guys got pretty smart people coming out of there. And I like your dedication for that. Do you think? Because I know, like in regular irrigation, you can get to use a smart controller or soil moisture sensors. You can get a rebate from the water agencies or water districts. Is that something you're going to also shoot for your product to get that done?
I think we need a little bit more on-farm research for this, but I will think that we can prove that this can be one of the things that the California Department of Food and Agriculture can consider as like an announcement for improving irrigation efficiency, at least for like the on the farms. Because there's like some colleagues with the cooperative extension that are already planning to use our technique and system for auditing the distribution uniformity of irrigation systems. Because now you can measure the pretty much like the water content at every single sprinkler, and that's going to be like a good way to see how efficient the current irrigation systems are. But yeah, the whole concept of what we do is like that precision agriculture mantra, right? When I started, they were telling me, like whenever you're talking to the farmers, they might find it very complex, well, like all these sensors and technology for just growing crops, but like the ultimate goal is to really do more crops per drop, right? Like increase the amount of production that we can do. Yeah,
that's like
increase the amount of production that we can have. Yeah, it is a good tagline. It's easy to digest and very timely in California now with like futures of water scarcity and water cuts that we're going to face. So business as usual goes. We might have to probably retire a lot of agricultural land, but if we are very wise at managing our water and improving irrigation with these type of technologies, we might be able to preserve our leadership in global agriculture.
Have you used this technology to look at other potential soil contaminants or like any other things that you got? I know it's like kind of, we've been talking a lot about moisture because obviously we're a water show, but I'm curious just because I always turn left whenever I'm supposed to turn right. Have you guys used that for like nitrate contamination or, kind of some of the runoff that we are concerned about groundwater contamination, which is why I'm asking as a water person.
Or salinity.
Exactly, well, yes, all those things.
Salinity indeed, yeah. So these type of sensors that we're using were actually originally developed to and started very thoroughly by the U.S. Salinity Lab here in Riverside for salinity management and salinity mapping. Well, what we figured out is that a lot of the crops, like the high-cash crops that use a lot of water, grow in non-salt affected soils for the most part. And in that specific window of like better soils, then you can do the soil moisture mapping. When you start having salinity, then we are using these type of technologies for salinity mapping and understanding how much the salinity is accumulating in the soil, so how much water needs to be added to wash it away from the roots so that the crops can thrive. It is a slightly different approach, but nonetheless, that's the like a strong second application, or would I say like the primary application that these type of sensors have seen and have been used widely for here in California.
Congrats to you and your team and your robot guys who put this all together. It's really interesting, and it's a good breakthrough. I think it can be very cost effective compared to the other ways that I've seen them do it. Like I said, with drones and things of that sort. And like you said, you got to fly under the canopy and measure with the others. And this seems to fit the bill. Real quickly, so we have about 1.5 minutes left. How can anybody get more information about it? Is there a website that they can go and read more about you?
Thanks for that. I'm the director of UC Riverside Center for Agriculture, Food and the Environment, CAFE for short. So if you Google UCR CAFE, you'll find information about me and the other amazing people doing precision agriculture research here at UCR. Otherwise, if you want to get in touch with me directly, you can find my contact in that website or just Google Elias Cudiero. It's a unique enough name that I'm the only one having it, so I'll pop out and you can contact me via my UCR email that way.
We appreciate that very much, and I'll get back to you in a week or two and talk about some more stuff for the future, but we do appreciate you coming on and giving our audience something to learn some more knowledge, and I appreciate that. So you have a great week, and thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Bye.
All right, bye-bye. All right, it's time to go, and the one thing that Tara and I have to tell you is...
if you like green,
you gotta have blue. So good night, everybody. Oh, and Chris sent me a text that says there is beaches in Buckeye, Arizona. I don't know why he sent me that, but I'll give him a call right now to find out. I'm supposed to pass it on to you. So you have a good one, and we'll talk to you next week. Good night.
NBC News on KCAA Loma Linda, sponsored by Teamsters Local 1932, protecting the future.